Hey everybody, in today's video I wanted to show you my collection of albums by the band. Unfortunately, yesterday the final band member that was still living, Garth Hudson, passed away. So I wanted to make this video as just a small little tribute to Garth Hudson and all the members of the band, because sadly now they've all passed away. So the band, for those who don't know, they were just a hugely influential band in the late 60s. And they first were Bob Dylan's backing band on his 1966 world tours. And of course they played with Dylan lots of other times after that. And then famously, of course, they recorded the Basement tapes, which are some of my favorite Bob Dylan recordings. I love the Basement tapes and just the mystery behind the Basement tapes, and that whole time period is very, very fascinating to me. And Garth Hudson had a big part in the Basement tapes. So he was the one who was actually in charge of recording those demos that they were making in the basement. So he would put the reels of tape on, hit record, set up the microphones and all that kind of stuff. So without Garth Hudson, we wouldn't even have the Basement tapes. But what I want to show you now are the albums that I have in my collection from the band. I have all of their studio albums and I have one of their live albums as well. And just kind of talk about each pressing and talk about the songs that I love on these albums. I should mention that I love everything the band ever put out. They're just one of those bands, a lot like the Beatles or Bob Dylan or Neil Young or Fleetwood Mac or those kind of bands, where it just seems like they didn't always put out like monster hit albums, but they always put out music that I just loved. Everything they did, there's something about it that I like. So let's start with their very first album, and probably their most famous album. This album is called Music from Big Pink, and it was released in, I believe, 1968. And it features a front cover that was painted by Bob Dylan, and it's supposed to represent each member of the band and Bob himself, because there are 6 people on here. And this is on the Capitol Rainbow label. I'll show you the record here in a second, but there's a really great gatefold. I've always loved this gatefold. This is a picture taken with the band and all of their family members, taken at Rick Danko's chicken farm. I think it's his parents' chicken farm, chicken ranch, I guess. I think it's Ontario. And then if you're wondering who these people are up here, these are Levon Helm's parents, who couldn't make it to the photo shoot, but I always thought that was a cool inclusion there. And if you can, I don't know if you can read that, but there's some text right here. It says next of kin, kind of cool. And there's a great shot of the band looking cool as can be. And this is the back. And this is an original, I think this is the first pressing on the Capitol Rainbow label. And it is a Los Angeles pressing, pressed at the Los Angeles pressing plant by Capitol. And for a Capitol album of this generation, it sounds great. Some of these Capitol Rainbow labels, as from you probably know, like a lot of the Beatles pressings and stuff, they can be pretty noisy and kind of shrill. This is not like that at all for me. It's very rich. The vinyl is actually relatively quiet for a Capitol pressing. It's still not dead quiet at all, but it's got great sound, and it's got really, really wide stereo. The song, my favorite song, there's many songs in here that are my favorite songs, but I loved Chest Fever. The intro, Garth Hudson's organ intro on this song is so heavy and just amazing. If you listen to one song today, based off a recommendation from me, I'd recommend listening to Chest Fever by the band. It is absolutely a mind blower. It's so great. Other songs in this album that I absolutely love, Tears of Rage, which is a song that Richard Manuel co-wrote with Bob Dylan. Amazingly beautiful song. I love The Weight, obviously. I love all these songs. It's hard for me to actually like single some out. This Wheels on Fire is just another amazing song that was co-written with Bob Dylan. Rick Danko and Bob Dylan wrote it. Lonesome Susie is amazing. I Shall Be Released, of course. Just absolutely a brilliant classic band album. So Music from Big Pink is just one of the all-time best albums ever recorded by anyone. So I'm definitely happy to have this one in my collection. I should also mention that my wife is a huge fan of the band, and she kind of is the one who got me into the band. I always kind of liked them, but then when I met her and she just loved them, it really got me way more interested in the band, and so I ended up getting all these pressings because I just really wanted to have them. Okay, and this is their second album, just self-titled, called The Band, and I love this album as well. It's also a gatefold, and it's another cool gatefold. I love gatefolds or albums that show photos of the band, like recording, like in the studio. That always fascinates me. You can see what instruments they're playing, what mics they have set up. And I always have loved this photo right here of Levon and Robbie, and it looks like they're working on something. Robbie's playing guitar, Levon's playing drums. Just cool photo. And this one is on the green Capital Target label, and this one is a it was cut by Robert Ludwig, so it's got RL in the dead wax, and it sounds really nice. Some of my favorite songs on here are Rag Mama Rag, of course. The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down is amazing. Up on Crippled Creek is just one of my all-time favorite grooves. The groove on Up on Crippled Creek is just unbelievable. It's so good. That goes without saying, of course. And then Rockin' Chair I love. I just love all the songs on here. It's just another absolute stunner of an album. So that is the self-titled band album. I believe this was released in 1969. And this is a first pressing. Not that first pressings are always the best sounding pressing, because that's not always the case, but sometimes it is the case. And I think for this one, at least for me, for what I've heard, this sounds absolutely fantastic. Next up, Stage Fright. Now this is not a first pressing. This is like a later pressing. I don't know exactly what pressing, what year this is. I don't quite remember, but this is Stage Fright, their third album, and this was engineered, interestingly enough, by Todd Rundgren. Before Todd Rundgren was really like a superstar, he somehow got involved with, like, I think Albert Grossman, who was managing the band, and they hired him to engineer this album up in Woodstock. And apparently the sessions were a bit tense, is what I'll say. And then Glenn Johns also was brought in. Glenn Johns, who worked with the Beatles, of course, on Get Back, and he worked with Led Zeppelin and The Who, and just an amazing engineer himself. He was brought in to mix this album, and there's been controversy over the years as to, because the other thing I should mention is Todd Rundgren also made a mix. He made his own mix, and then Glenn Johns made a mix, and no one really knows which mix was used for this album. Did they use a combination of both, or just Todd Rundgren's, or just Glenn Johns? It's all very confusing, but either way, this sounds great. I've always loved the sound of this album. It's really like very present in your face drums, in your face guitar. Vocals are really up front, very nice. And this originally came with a poster. I don't have the poster. It came with like a wraparound photo that would wrap around the front of this. This one is also on the Capital Target label. So actually this might be an early pressing. I don't know. Maybe I was wrong about that, saying it was a later pressing. This also has, it was also cut by Robert Ludwig. It's got RL and the dead wax. And my favorite songs on here are The Shape I'm In. It's just an absolutely brilliant song. I love Stage Fright. I love the way Rick Danko sings Stage Fright. Strawberry Wine is great. I love Time to Kill is amazing. Another Whistle Stop is great. Sleeping is a beautiful song by Richard Manuel. So just another brilliant album. I'm going to say brilliance a lot because the band were just brilliant. So I love the album Stage Fright. And of course, they did a remix a couple years ago for the 50th anniversary. I guess that would have been 2023, perhaps, would be 50th anniversary. But they did a remix. I think Bob Claremont did the remix with Robbie Robertson supervising that. I could be wrong as far as the date goes, because I know Robbie passed away a couple of years ago. Either way, they did a remix. I have that, a digital version of that. Sounds good, but I think I prefer the original version right here. Also, I should mention with the remix that they did, Robbie Robertson resequenced the album as well. And I think I prefer just the original sequence just because that's what I'm used to. But anyway, little side note there for Stage Fright. Next up, this is Moondog Matinee. And this is kind of an interesting album. This is not an original pressing. I think this is a repress. These are a bunch of cover songs that the band worked on. A bunch of songs that I think they used to play before they were like famous in the clubs. They would play these songs. But it's a great album nonetheless. There's the back. And this is one of the band albums that I don't listen to all that much. This is the one I'm like the least familiar with. It's on the Capitol Purple label, which is kind of a throwback, which is kind of cool. Interesting looking label, which I always like the Capitol Purple label. I think that's from like the 1940s or 50s. I could be wrong. But yeah, Ain't Got No Home is fantastic. Mystery Train, of course, is great. Third Man theme, really, really cool. Yeah, just a great, great album. And let me see. Oh yeah, this is a Sterling, has Sterling stamped in the dead wax. So a great, great sounding record. And one that I want to listen to more. So I will have to do that and report back to you. I'm sure some of you are currently screaming out there saying how wonderful this album is, and I wasn't talking about enough of the great tracks, and you're probably exactly right. Next up, probably my least favorite of all the band's albums, but I still really like it. This is Cahoots. And this one is another gatefold. There's the back cover taken by Richard Avedon. Richard Avedon, of course, famous photographer who took photos of the Beatles. There is the gatefold. Good lyric printing and cool photo. I think that's where they recorded the album. And this one is on, I think, the Capitol Plum label. Yeah. Or the Red Target label. I don't know what people call this, but... And this is an original pressing. Let me see who's in the dead wax here. It's a Winchester pressing. I can see the Winchester symbol. I don't see Sterling or anything in the dead wax, so not sure who cut it, but it sounds fine. I don't remember this. I haven't listened to this in quite some time. I don't remember this being an amazing pressing or anything like that, but it's got some great songs. Life is a Carnival, I love. When I Paint My Masterpiece is a song that Bob Dylan wrote that the band do on here, and that's just one of the best songs of all time. 4% Pantomime is a cool song that they do with Van Morrison. Van Morrison co-wrote it with Robbie Robertson, and he sings on it as well. Very cool song. Yeah, those are the highlights that I remember. Haven't listened to this in a long time. I need to listen to this one again as well. But I do remember it as not being one of my favorite of the band's albums. I'm sure some of you out there are probably saying to yourselves, what is he talking about? But just how I feel about it. Now, and I know this is an unpopular opinion, this is one of my favorite of the band's albums, and it's their last studio album with Robbie Robertson. They made some albums, by the way, after this album, but Robbie at this point, well, we'll talk about the next album and then we'll talk about when Robbie leaves. But this is called Northern Lights, Southern Cross, and I've just always loved this album and the sound of this album as well. It's not a gatefold. Here is the inner sleeve. Back. And this is on the Capital Orange label, which is what they used in the 70s. I believe this is like 1973, maybe? This is a Los Angeles pressing. And my favorite song on here, and probably one of my all-time favorite just band songs, is a song called Ophelia. I just love the groove. I love the way they sing it. Oh, by the way, this is 1975, as I see that it's written on here. I love Acadian Driftwood. I love Forbidden Fruit. Hobo Jungle's amazing. It Makes No Difference is absolutely fantastic. This is just a brilliant, brilliant album by the band. And it just sounds wonderful. Again, I don't know who cut this album, but it's got great sound. And I know a lot of people don't really like this album for some reason, but for me, I've always loved it. So that's the band's Northern Lights, Southern Cross. Had to make sure I was getting that right. And last but not least, and I know there is another live album by the band. I think it's called, I can't think of the name of it. I'll think of it as I'm going through here, but definitely their most famous live album is called The Last Waltz. And of course, this is was a major motion picture filmed by Martin Scorsese, and it's just one of the best rock and roll films of all time. If you haven't seen The Last Waltz, do yourself a favor, track it down, watch it. I'm sure it's streaming somewhere. Get the DVD, Blu-ray, whatever. It's just great. And owning the record is great as well, but watching it, there's just something special about it. The people, besides the band themselves, you have the staple singers. I'll just read the back here. Paul Butterfield, Eric Clapton, Neil Diamond, Bob Dylan, Emmylou Harris, Ronnie Hawkins, Dr. John, Joni Mitchell, Van Morrison. They list Ringo Starr, but Ringo only plays on I Shall Be Released, the very last song for the encore. Neil Young, famously, is on here. Ron Wood, Muddy Waters. Just an amazing, amazing lineup of people. And just a very, very fantastic concert. Definitely worth owning. I think this is like a triple album. I think that's right. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, triple album. Comes with a booklet. I'm not going to show all this just because it's a lot to show, but get a nice booklet here listing. Got some cool photos. Lists who plays what. Rock of Ages is the other live album, and I don't have that. I have had it in the past. When I used to have my website, I got I think I got like 8 or 9 different pressings of Rock of Ages, and I found what I thought was the best one, and I sold that on my website. So I'm familiar with it, and I liked it a lot, but I don't have one in my collection anymore. So got to pick that one up. But Last Waltz is definitely fantastic. So that's my collection of albums by the band. Loved the band. I loved Garth Hudson. I also like, by the way, a lot of stuff the band played on, including a lot of Dylan recordings, like the album Planet Waves. They play on that Dylan album, which I love that album. The Basement Tapes, as I mentioned before. They also play on a lot of Neil Young recordings. They didn't play on like a full album with Neil Young, but like different cuts they played on with him. Some of the stuff from like the Zuma album. On the Beach, they play on some of the On the Beach tracks. Just the band played on a lot of other people's stuff as well, and just always were fantastic. So happy to make this video today. I'd love to know in the comments below some of your favorite band songs. What's your favorite band album? And if maybe you are aware of better pressings than the ones I showed you here for some of these albums, I'd love to know. I'm always excited and interested to know in hunting down some better pressings of certain albums. So let me know in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed this video. More to come. Take care and bye for now.